A very good morning to all our viewers. It's the budget day, and we have a special hangout today lined up. We start our budget day with a hangout with Mr. P.V. Srinivasan, Mr. Yogesh Dhar, and Anish Thakkar. And for that, we have our colleague Arun Giri, right from Bombay. Over to you.
Thanks, Aditya, and we are going to come to you soon to get a wrap up of what all the pink papers are saying today. We start the budget morning with a bit of a sad news. Sitting Lok Sabha MP, Mr. E. Ahmed, sitting Lok Sabha MP, Mr. E. Ahmed from Kerala, he expired earlier this morning. He suffered a cardiac arrest, and I don't know. Are we still live? Can you?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Absolutely. So there is a bit of uncertainty over the presentation of the budget speech. Multiple news channels and papers are reporting contradictory stuff on whether the Lok Sabha will be adjourned for the day. But nevertheless, we wait for the Speaker's final decision, which should be there in an hour's time. And we begin our hangout and our coverage, assuming that the budget speech is on. And of course, we have an ensemble cast to begin the budget day. And where we are at Starbucks in Mumbai, in Elphinstone. Wow, this coffee can do wonders to a person's energy. And there is no South Indian bias here. Of course, we have a bias towards coffee. And for PVS sir, who's just back from Melbourne, who's back from Melbourne last night, must have missed his filter coffee for a few days. And I can't imagine him starting from his house without a dose of filter coffee.
More than the filter coffee, I missed the tennis match also in Melbourne.
You missed a classic, sir. We couldn't take our eyes off that match. And Mr. Jaitley, the finance minister, coverage as piercing the Chakraview. And just look at the events of the last 2 months. And the reason we've said that the theme of the Taxsutra coverage is going to be budget 2017 piercing the Chakraview, because the demonetization has created a sort of web which the finance minister will have to untangle. You have a perceptible economic slowdown, which is undeniable. There is a feeling that jobs need to be created. Once Bill Clinton said in 92, it's the economy, stupid. And any politician who wants to win re-election knows that it is the jobs and the economic sentiment that finally drives what voter does at the polling booth. So we will have so there is an expectation from the finance minister that his fourth budget, how years fly by, it is Mr. Jaitley's fourth budget, that it will have a lot of SOPs, it will have a lot of incentives, at least for creation of jobs, and you will not have too much of a tax burden on the middle class, on the common man, especially with just 10 days to go for elections to 5 states, including the biggest state in India, that is Uttar Pradesh. And tax nostalgia contributors P.V. Srinivasan from Bengaluru, Yogesh Bhai, Mr. Yogesh Dhar, partner Bansi S. Mehta, and our great friend Anish. Anish is also here, and we are going to be discussing so many of these themes. Yogesh Bhai, let me start with you. What do you expect to be the macro theme, the macro focus of Finance Minister Arun Jaitley's budget speech, and then we will come to the some of the micro tax proposals?
What I expect is not necessarily what I think it should be. But what I expect is some sort of the Robin Hood approach, which we have seen in our Honorable Prime Minister, that you take from the rich and give to the poor. Now that's going to give him the political mileage everywhere. And if we look at that approach, we find big ticket items like possibility of estate duty coming in.
Estate duty means
inheritance tax coming in, where one doesn't really know what sort of revenue it will generate for the exchequer, but at the same time there will be a huge political mileage in terms of telling the public that look, we are taxing the rich. So that seems, according to me, that would be, and therefore coupled with, reduction in tax rates and not reduction in tax rates, but increasing the exemption limits and things like that, standard deductions, which will attract the small income earners. So that sort of a package is what I feel is likely to come.
The focus you think will be on the small income earners.
Yeah,
people in the say 1 lakh to 10 lakh bracket.
Whatever it is, that's a question of nitty-gritty. But the direction which I feel is taking from the rich and giving to the poor. That seems to be
PVS sir, he's going to take from you and give to me. If Yogesh Bhai's words are true.
I am also.
Hey, Arun, this is a glad exchange. I am too happy to share that way. I have no problem. In fact, directionally, I have no disagreement with Yogesh Bhai. It will be a budget, and more deservingly so, because if there are income disparities and living standard disparities of the kind we are seeing, and the Prime Minister himself has said that very few people are filing a return with over, say, 24 lakh income. Obviously, there's a sensitivity which has to be addressed, that people who are income but not reporting have to be brought into the tax book more forcefully. And people who have assets far beyond what they need for their own generation will need to be subject to estate duty or inheritance tax. Both these moves, it may not come immediately, but directionally it will be set in a way that people get enough notice, but nevertheless, they have to take notice of the law change.
Sure. Anish?
I think I agree with Yogesh Bhai and PVS. 2 or 3 key themes that look likely in this budget are: one, that there will be a shift towards more equity in terms of distribution of income and wealth, and therefore the Robin Hood approach that Yogesh Bhai talked about is probably going to be starting, at least, and it has in a way started with the disclosure schemes, etc. But it will probably just gain more momentum. The second thing I believe is going to be a big incentive or a big shift to encourage digital transactions, and that is going to probably be something that one would wait and watch out for. And the third would be that yes, a recalibration of tax rates is in order. Anyway, he had promised that he would bring the corporate tax rate down to 25%. So we will see some concrete steps in that direction. I think he's only got 2 more years, this year and the next year, to do it, if he has to keep his promise. So we will hopefully see the corporate tax rate going down a percentage or 2, most likely 2. And you will see the maximum rate of individuals probably aligned. You will at the same time probably see some different taxes that can come in. So like they brought in the dividend tax for the super rich last year. You may see a transaction tax for cash withdrawals, etc. But I think that is all the detail.
Yogesh Bhai, you are not, Anish, Yogesh Bhai is definitely not a proponent of the BCCT. Yogesh Bhai, there was an uproar when Mr. Pranab Mukherjee brought it. I think, was it Mr. Pranab Mukherjee or Chidambaram? I think. When the UPA one brought it, they had to withdraw it quickly.
Correct. Because banking, the 2 things, one is banking transaction tax and one is banking cash withdrawals or cash transaction tax. If you say banking transaction tax on an overall basis, number one, I think it does not have any economic rationale. Because if you say I'm going to tax banking transactions as such, then you're taxing poor and the rich equally. Okay, I am not too sure whether it will pass the test of constitutional validity, because it is neither tax on income nor is it tax on consumption. It is just tax on withdrawal or a banking transaction. If you say it is only on the cash transactions, then I'm afraid you are really taxing the poor. Because, if I give salary to my driver or my peon, he is a person who is going to withdraw almost everything the next day.
But they're saying, say, cash transactions over 2 lakhs, over 5 lakhs, something of that sort. See, the whole theme, Yogesh Bhai, how do you take monetization to its logical conclusion? The jury is still out on whether it's a success or not. But many people probably feel that now the only way left to justify or to proclaim success on demonetization is to move the country quickly, not gradually, but quickly, towards cashless transactions and so on.
Again, probably you'll be repeating the same mistake that we did at the time of demonetization. Are we prepared? Because we were just having a chat before this that even in a city like Pune where you operate, you don't have internet. You don't have availability of internet on an ongoing seamless
Internet
basis.
connection
Internet
is a big
connection
issue
is
even
a
in
very, very
cities
big
like
issue.
Mumbai.
So every time we break, we cut off, and those sort of things. So where is the infrastructure to encourage or to make sure that this digital payments, e-payments happen seamlessly all over the country? Maybe in metro cities you may not have that sort of a difficulty, but are we very clear that we have that sort of infrastructure everywhere else in the country?
PVS, sir, you go along with that view of Yogesh bhai?
View is correct. I have no difficulty in accepting that. But there are some things. Policy need not deal with our views immediately. The policy direction to encourage and discourage cash payment, cash withdrawal. Both will be addressed.
Okay.
I think digital payments will be incentivized and cash withdrawals will be taxed. Both are not done. If you do only one side and not do the other side, then it is possibly not a complete implementation of policy. Maybe both will be done. We'll find incentives as well as some tax on withdrawals.
Anish, do we have enough sections in the Income Tax Act, right, that discourage cash payments over a particular limit?
So you have, Section 48(3), which basically disallows cash payments which are in the nature of expenditure over a particular limit, which is 20,000 rupees. You have Section 269 SS and 269 T, which discourage or which penalize the taking of loans or advances, over a certain limit in cash. So you have some of these safeguards. But
You think that will become even stricter?
it will probably become stricter, and you'll have to see and wait, in terms of how this is done. But I would believe that the direction would definitely be to kind of discourage as much cash payment as possible.
Discourage cash payments as much as possible, and possibly incentives PVS for digital transactions. But again, you'll be disproportionately favoring the upper middle class.
There's nothing wrong. Let me say, political leadership understands how India gets segmented at this point in time. Middle class is the largest constituent at this point in time, and that segment conveniences are addressed positively. That we should not find fault with the political leadership because they are addressing one constituency. That's a significant majority.
Okay, sure. Yogesh bhai, you had an article yesterday in the Times of India, very strongly advocating the bringing back of standard deduction. Since so much of the focus here today is on the common man, uh, standard deduction had its run. I distinctly remember, and there is a feeling that this could be one sort of a sop to the millions of salary taxpayers. Could you just explain to our readers, some of the younger ones who may not recollect what standard deduction is?
No, when I'm earning professional income or business income, I get deduction in terms of expenses that I incur for the purpose of my professional business. But when it comes to salaried earners are taxed on a gross basis on the amount of the salary they receive, subject to certain exemptions like HRA, etc., etc. However, at the same time, they do have to incur certain expenses, which you may say that some small amount of conveyance allowance is exempt, but at the same time, that may or may not be enough. So you do have to incur expenses either partly for the purposes of your employment or for the purposes not necessarily for the employment, but in the course of exercise of your employment.
Absolutely.
So a standard deduction was provided, and it was there probably right from the beginning of the Income Tax Act, and then it was abolished a few years back. I do find a case for reintroducing standard deduction, so that because for salaried earners, really speaking, there is not much scope for
tax savings.
for tax savings. Apart from savings,
Housing loan or something.
Housing loan, etc. So,
but this also puts money back into the hands of the taxpayer. in a way it will boost consumption, Anish.
That's right. It will boost consumption, and I think the limit of standard deduction that they had earlier, which was 20,000 rupees, needs to be recalibrated. And also, there has to
Wasn't it
be
one third of
one third or one fourth of salary, subject to a maximum of 20,000.
Was it?
20,000.
Or
Yeah,
I don't
20,000
exactly
was
remember,
max.
but
20,000 was max.
yeah,
Yeah.
So, but
was the
Arun,
maximum, which is why I'm saying I think they need to recalibrate that to at least make it a sensible number. The other one I think which they need to do is they need to give certain deductions for a salaried employee to continuously reskill or update his education. And I think that is important because today the pace of change and there are so many new things that you need to learn on an ongoing basis, and it's not only for us professionals, sir, but it is also for people who are in different fields, that they need to keep on continuously updating their skills and their knowledge. And therefore there has to be some sort of incentive given to them to do that. And I would believe that earlier you did have a section in the income tax act where a certain deduction was available for say books or etc. Something that a salaried employee bought for his own professional enrichment. So that is something that should, I would believe, come back.
Previous, sir,
yeah,
if
but
demonetization was such a radical move, wouldn't you expect that same, sort of the daring or courage to be shown in the budget proposals as well? Then why not go for the juggler? Like Surjit Balla, made a case for a flat tax. He said you give the economy a huge booster shot, and he said that
a
the
flat
economy
tax
will provide the scope and
and
demonetization. That
a
this
flat
is what. Yeah. Yes, sir.
flat tax and state duty, they don't go together, if I can say. If you want to segment the society into the rich, poor, middle, affordable, direct, and the equities and inequities have to be maintained. A flat tax is not a great instrument for maintaining equity. So, if say that direct tax is a tax in proportion to earnings, flat tax is not a measure at all to achieve that. I think flat tax may not be the tool which the finance ministers will use. At least there has not been much discussion ahead of the budget. Get to a preparedness and have a flat tax implemented in the budget. What I do expect is a reinforcement of what Mr. Anish just said, is that finally we have to create many opportunities for employment. India needs 10 million jobs every month, that is 1 crore jobs annually. These jobs are not going to be created either by the government or by the private sector. They have to be built by people who are self-skilled. So self-skilling is a important requirement, and therefore anything which enhances skill will be incentivized by the government, and that will be well received. Could be skilling at a very where you find the skill development council getting engaged, or it could be just enhancing your skill and my skill. Still, we are trying to keep ourselves competitive in the fields we are in. So I think anything which requires skilling will be done well, and you'll find many policies in the government encouraging skill development. The last policy of the government has not been much of a success. It was announced with a lot of fanfare, but the actual takeoff from the ground at the ground level has not been much. For example, you have got uh,
You, yeah.
startup incentives, you have got many incentives for the skills, but all those have not taken off at all. The job creation as prospect is looking very bleak, and the government has to look at the organized sector is using technology. The disorganized sector is throwing out jobs already. You are actually in a job compression situation rather than enhancement situation. How to reverse that? How to make job creation happen? I think that will be the challenge of the.
I think with technology, I think it's something that we are seeing in almost every day. How technology is leading to a lot of job losses.
yeah, true. That's
Almost all industries are now leveraging technology to do the work
Everybody is
that.
talking about digital robotics and all of that, which will ultimately replace human labor, and therefore you need a certain incentive towards creating jobs for those who are likely to lose their jobs because of this.
I just hope that robotics will not be able to give the tax advice and write the tax summaries that Taxsutra puts out. At least our jobs will be safe.
It's very surprising, though. I thought I was reading some statistics that there is an app or a website in the US which actually gives out 90% correct legal advice. So yeah, we need to be scared.
We'll not tell you the name. We are not going to tell you.
No,
we're not.
No,
the last 10% matters.
Absolutely.
It's
I
the
want
last
to
10%.
talk about that I am in the 10%.
Yogesh, bhai, you're not a fan of the introduction. There's been so much controversy, I may say, over taxation. Whenever taxation of FPIs comes in, it's always controversial.
Yeah.
Even a word earlier on the Mauritius tax treaty, some tinkering, the stock market would crash.
Yeah.
Uh, the same is now with FPI taxation. There is a buzz on reintroduction of long-term capital gains. The Prime Minister said a statement. Then it had to be clarified, and so on and so forth. It's a touchy issue. What's your whole take? Should long-term capital gains be reintroduced for market transactions?
No. I don't think the time is still ripe. I mean, we had an economic purpose for having this sort of an exemption, and then putting a small security transaction tax, which is very STT, which is very small, but everyone bears it. It is as small as a brokerage, or maybe smaller than a brokerage also. So that was affordable to everyone's pocket,
And it could be easily
and
collected without any
could be easily
controversy.
collected without controversies. And I have seen hardly any litigation, or as good as no litigation, on the front of STT, because nobody really bothers about that small little tax. So I don't think that the purpose for which the long-term capital gains exemption on the market, which was given, the economic purpose behind that is achieved. On the contrary, we need more boost for the capital markets and for the industries, to have more capital. So
You think it will make the markets nervous? They'll react if the capital gains tax is
I'm sure. You
reintroduced?
see, I think where it has stemmed from is because of issues like penny stocks, where people have misused this provision, and that is why that rethinking seems to be coming. So it's coming out of misuse of these provisions by some elements of the society, rather than from any economic reason. So if you have to tackle penny stocks problem, you have machinery under the act. You have GAR now
You have
coming in.
SEBI.
You have SEBI, you have GAR, you have McDowell, you have all sorts of provisions in the act. You have these draconian provisions of Section 56(2), which says that a premium will be taxable. So you have brought these provisions. Now, because of that, you don't need to, the baby out of the bathtub. So you don't need to do this, at this stage. So I'm not really for it.
Anish, you are the financial
Yeah.
services expert.
And I would tend to agree with Yogesh bhai, that securities transaction tax came in with a purpose. The purpose was to deepen the penetration into the capital markets. Even if you see today, the capital markets are not as deeply penetrated by residents as we would like them to. And therefore, I think the time really is not right to start taxing long-term capital gains again. I would believe that if at all there is some sort of tinkering that could happen for the period of the holding of the asset to constitute a long-term asset. But more, other than that, I don't think anything else will happen. I would believe that what Yogesh bhai said about the penny stocks is absolutely correct. I think it's a misuse by a few of the few sections of the society, and for preventing that misuse, I don't think you can start taxing capital gains. I don't think that is the right way to do it.
But PVS, sir, you want to have a quick take?
I think
Are you an affected party?
Arun, if I have to look at dividend and capital gain as rewards out of holding a capital asset, there is a lot of arbitrage between dividend rewards and capital gains reward. Of course, the who pays for it, where the consideration comes, all those are differentiators. But essentially, if dividend and capital gain is zero tax, but dividend is 30% tax, it's not the nicest of arbitrages which the lawmakers will allow to remain. Either the dividend has to be rationalized or capital gain has to be upwardly pulled up. I do not know which of these two can happen, but if I have to reconcile the Prime Minister's statement and the assurance from the Finance Minister a little later, then possibly the indication is to extend the period of holding, because that possibly leaves the short-term ability to raise capital gains on short-term gains a little more than what is now currently available. So period of holding is a good solution. I go with Anish on that. But I don't see the arbitrage of 30% versus 0 is a good arbitrage to leave it on the table.
So the current period of holding is 12 months, right?
Is for listed is 12 months. For unlisted shares is 24 months. For other assets is 36 months. So I think there will be one period of holding. I suspect convergence to 24 is what I would probably want to guesstimate if I were a betting man. But we'll wait for the fine print.
Let's move on to another, issue that we discuss every year, uh, and probably that's the reason for our existence as well, business existence, which is tax litigation. I mean, look at the tax arrears as that the end of last year was 8.4 or 8.5 lakh crore. Now it's crossed 9 lakh crore. We were chatting with one of the litigation partners of one of the firms, a good friend of Anish and Yogesh Bhai, day before in Mumbai, and he said that there is the PEPS is coming, GAR is coming. There is no way that litigation is going to come down. So, when we look at the litigation horizon, despite the plethora of CBDT circulars, some 40, 50 circulars a year, yet we don't see, there are, of course, the limits were increased. Some circulars said that, we'll file appeals only in important matters and so on and so forth. No frivolous appeals any longer. But so on the ground, are you seeing any perceptible change in
No,
terms
no,
of the litigation?
I think it's not a policy initiative backing dispute. I think it's an administrative inability to accept the policy level intentions. If the boards of both the revenue boards accept the policy intent and implement the law with the sense that the government is not willing to be a litigant, but it's the revenue which is forcing the government to be a litigant. I think that intent, unless it changes, it will not be very easy. I'm not saying the assessees are not litigants, but assessees litigation is only one part of the story. Substantial litigation emerges from the revenue boards. I think if unless the revenue boards contain themselves, bring about a policy within themselves that they will appeal only on certain matters or not all matters, this problem will remain. And as you just mentioned, we are returning from Melbourne yesterday. No other country has a litigation history like what India has. Not even countries which collect tax with a harshness which is known to be bad, but nevertheless, no other country has the extent of litigation which India is experiencing.
Yeah, Yogesh, of course, I'm sure that your passions will rise when we discuss this topic. But Yogesh, look at something like startups. On one hand, we are talking of Make in India, and on the other hand, we are talking of Make in India, Startup India, and you have startups receiving notices left, right, and center on the share premiums and asking them to justify, and it somehow doesn't fit in with the entire objective and narrative.
So one is the law making and the other is the administration of the law. So you with very good intentions you make law so as to give boost to the to some part of the economy or some part of the industry or some business. But then when it comes to administration, we find that the administration in its over enthusiasm creates all sort of difficulties. Now, say for example, charities. Look at the way the charities have been dealt with. Charitable institutions have been dealt with by the administration in the last couple of years. Look at all these tax exemption provisions, where we find invariably. I mean, it's not the recent thing, but it has always been the story of the Indian tax department that wherever there are exemptions available, you find there is lots and lots of litigation.
Yeah.
Now, there are situations where I am in the last year of my tax holiday, and I get a denial of tax holiday, and the past 6 years are reopened. So this is the way in which the administration is there, and what really happens is this is probably because of lack of accountability. You know that I create the tax officer says I create a demand. I create a demand, I enforce a demand, I go and attach the
And then you have
accounts,
arrears.
and then you have arrears, and then maybe at a later stage, जाके ऊपर
But the
से लेके
arrears
आओ.
are almost now becoming unmonitorable.
Absolutely,
We
absolutely.
are reaching a stage whereby we'll not know how to reconcile these arrears.
Correct.
but Yogesh, but you got to come up with some radical solution also. We have a massive issue. It's a big, several $1 billion elephant in the room, the 1,000 pound gorilla in the room, should we say? But look at, they tried with the dispute resolution scheme. They tried with the DRP. Some will say transfer pricing, they've partially succeeded with the APA, but somehow the litigation just doesn't seem to be coming down.
That's probably because, I mean, from my experience, I would say it's more because of the administration and high-pitched assessments that we see. SSC, who is well advised.
They came up with a circular on IP's assessments as well,
Yeah,
to discourage them.
that's true, but
Hasn't had the desired impact.
But what's the accountability? What's the accountability? Who is pinned down?
Well, the cat.
Who is pinned down? Who has been given a
Taken to task.
pink slip? Who is taken to task for making high pitch assessment where there is something which is ridiculously unstatable? Now the point is that it's not just the assessing officers. Even at the higher levels, we find that my own case in the earlier years are covered in my own favor by my own jurisdictional high court decision. Yet you are told that you pay 15% tax on the arrears because there is a circular which says you pay 15% tax and take your stay. Now that is ridiculous. So so these are the problems. These are the real issues.
We hope the effort is not. Anish, any solution?
Like, the one solution that I can think of is that the tax department has to recognize a concept called materiality. So certain frivolous litigations which do not exceed a particular threshold should not be pressed at all because they're not cost effective even for the department. So that I suspect will reduce some of them. The other, as Yogesh Bhai was saying, is please grant stay where there are cases which are covered by my own honor. I have seen that. I've had an exactly similar experience to Yogesh Bhai's a few days back, where there is your own order which covers the issue. Yet the tax department wants to make the assessment in a particular manner because it has gone to the High Court. Now that I don't think is something that should be pressed upon. There has to be a judicious view taken to litigate or not to litigate, because you would have favorable assessments for or favorable tribunal decisions for say 5 years. Tribunal keeps on deciding in a particular manner and the department still goes to High Court. I can understand, I would think that instead of taking a commissioner approval, there has to be an approving panel for the High Court appeals as well, where we take by an approving panel.
We will close with BEPS and GAR, but before that, Yogesh, on demonetization. Yesterday, we had a press release from the Finance Ministry, CBDT, saying that 18 lakh deposits are under scanner. 18 lakh taxpayers are going to receive queries. It will be online. You can reply online. 18 lakh seems a massive number. Massive number. To monitor those replies, to pick people from that, and even if you're going to do by analytics, this is not going to be easy, Yogesh.
Yeah, that's true. And my big problem here is that in the first few days of monetization, you said that you deposit 2,50,000. People left, right, and center deposited 2,50,000. Thereafter, you say that even those 2,50,000, if they are going to be questioned,
if they do not match with the taxpayer's profile,
now where do you go from here? I'm not for a moment saying that you shouldn't be doing that, but then you left people with a particular impression.
Is it a recipe for big ticket litigation further now, Yogesh? 18 lakh deposits under scanner. What's your first reaction?
The litigation in this problem is that if you're talking of 18 lakhs people who are deposited 2,50,000 or somewhere around that, they are not the people who will go and litigate. I mean, they don't have wherewithal to go and litigate. So chances are they will not litigate, and that may open up other areas of. I'm afraid.
Perfect. PVS sir, we have 1 minute. We are down with low battery. 1 minute. BEPS and GAR. Yogesh bhai, PVS sir. BEPS and GAR.
Both are gone. The indications that are on the budget.
BEPS and GAR, yeah.
Both will be, I don't see the government withdrawing anything on GAR. I think the date will be maintained and BEPS plan will be enforced, is my understanding.
Great. On that note, we are all set for budget 2017. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining in. And in case the budget speech does happen at 11 a.m., tune in to Taxsutra for live coverage, or live blogging of Union Budget 2017. piercing the
Arun,
Chakravyuh.
before,
Aditya.
before we sign out, good news to everyone. The news channels have confirmed that the budget is going ahead as planned.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
and can we close with the headline of the Economic Times? What does the Economic Times say today?
Oh, the Economic Times, well, it's flooded with the economic survey report. The Economic Times, it actually goes on with the Arvind Subramaniam interview, where he said that demonetization signals an important regime shift. In fact, all the newspapers are flooded with the economic survey report. The best one I like is this one, Return to Realism by Business Standard, the economic survey report. But interestingly, there are two more stories which have come up. One is the IT department moved to grade 1.8 lakh, or sorry, rather 18 lakh assessees for the cash deposits, and the other one is the U.S. President's the administration moved to overhaul the H-1B visas. Five Indian stocks, have lost 33,000 crore as U.S. prepares to raise bar for H-1B visas. I think we have lost Arun over there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yes, so
You summarize and close.
yes, so yes, we have a big day ahead. We have a long day ahead. I hope we will get you all the roadblock coverage right from Taxsutra. Good day, everyone.
Okay. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome.